be moderated by none other than Regina Montoya, one of our local Dallas Democrats. Regina is a Harvard-trained attorney. She's been nationally recognized as one of the top lawyers in the country. She's a former award-winning television commentator, often on political news. She is the CEO and chair of the Regina T. Montoya PLLC, and she is a frequent public speaker on a wide number of issues. Today, we'll be talking about engaging the Latino voter. She was one of the very first Latinas to earn partnership in a major corporate law firm in the United States. And she received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Texas Minority Council Program of the State Bar of Texas. In 1993, Ms. Montoya served in the White House as an assistant to the president and director of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. She was nominated by the president to serve the United States as a representative of the General Assembly of the United Nations. When she came home, Children's Hospital grabbed her up and she became general counsel for Children's Hospital. She is a member of numerous community boards. She has received numerous awards, but my personal favorite happens to be that she's made more than once the cover of Hispanic Executive Magazine, and Hispanic Business Magazine has twice named her one of the 100 most influential Hispanics in the United States. And the only thing I'm going to add is she happens to be married to former U.S. Attorney of the Northern District, Paul Coggins, who has written a book called Sting Like a Butterfly. I give you Regina Montoya.
Well, Carol, thank you for that incredible introduction. I so appreciate it. My family appreciates it too, so thank you. And the plug for Paul's book, which is a legal thriller. And so if you all are looking for something to read during this period of time, got a great book for you, so thank you. But what an extraordinary time for all of us to be together. And thank you to the Dallas County Democrats, to Carol and to her team. These have been a series that Carol and everyone has been putting on, but this one's going to be very special. And that's special because we have Sarah Saldana and Leticia Vanderpute with us today. But let me give you a little bit of context about where we're going to be going. And right now, all of you are muted, but you can put questions in the chat box. We will be getting those from you and asking those questions because I know we want to hear from you too. Latinos are going to be the largest non-white ethnic voting bloc in 2020 with 32 million eligible voters. Registration and mobilization are going to be critical, especially in states where Trump won with less than 100,000 votes. In states like Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Latino votes could have been the margin of victory. Here in Texas, the Hispanic population is the second largest in the nation, second only to California, make up nearly 40% of the state's population. We're sitting in Dallas, Texas, 42% Hispanic. Dallas has been a majority minority city for decades now. But the key question is, how are we going to ensure the turnout? Because one of those issues that we have talked about is this, that if Latinos in Texas came out in the same proportion as they do in California for Democrats, this would be a blue state right now. So how are we going to do that? And I can't think of two more wonderful people who can help us kind of investigate that, peel that onion, and think about how we're going to do that. Let me begin with Sarah Saldana. Sarah and I have known each other a long time. She started her legal career clerking for a federal judge, Judge Barefoot Sanders. I clerked for Judge Sarah T. Hughes just before she did with Judge Sanders. We both started our careers going with law firms, and Sarah was a partner in one of the big law firms as well. And she has had a storied legal career. She was the first Latina United States attorney for the Northern District of Texas. Carol mentioned my husband had done that in the Clinton administration. Sarah was nominated by President Obama. She led a team of over 200 attorneys, stretching from Dallas all the way to Lubbock. And then she was later asked by President Obama to serve as the director of the Immigration and Custom Enforcement, and she moved to Washington, D.C. for that time. And I remember seeing Sarah, who's an amazing speaker with so much to offer, coming to Dallas with her, with the Secret Service helping her as she was coming through, talking about these issues that are so important. Sarah and I serve on several boards together, including the Center for Public Policy Priority and now the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation, both nonprofits. And it's always so much fun to see Sarah, who now lives in Dallas, and you see her often. And then the legendary Leticia Vandeputte. Leticia is a registered practicing pharmacist and has done that for decades now. But you may know her as having served in the Texas legislature for over 2 decades and won so many awards. She was named a top 10 legislator. She focused in on small business, veterans, families, education, and was one of those experts on healthcare, which we have desperately needed during these period of time. I think one thing, and I'm reading this one off, Leticia, but I did not realize that you were a subject of a book, The Latina Legislator, Leticia Vandeputte, and the Road to Leadership. And if there was anyone that you can think about that can be a leader on that, it is Leticia. Now, some of you may also remember that Leticia ran for lieutenant governor for the state of Texas. So someone who has run statewide, knows these kinds of issues, a lifelong San Antonian, someone who has been in Texas and can give us some great insight today. She is currently she and former Texas Secretary of State Hope Andrade joined forces to form Andrade Vandeputte, which is a full service consulting firm. And Leticia and I also serve on as with Sarah, with the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation. And Leticia has been on many boards and commissions across the state, across the country. He's just done extraordinary things. She and her husband of 41 years have 6 kids. And just before we got on, we were hearing about her incredible children, several of whom are frontline workers, stretching from San Antonio to Houston to Austin. And we can't thank you enough for everything that you have done for our state, for our community. And thank you to your kids for being there for us. It's just been amazing. Well, let me launch right into the very first question. And that is this. Both of you have lived in Texas almost, if not all of your lives, very big portion of them. And you've seen enormous changes during that time, as I have. I've mentioned some of the majority-minority issues of the state of Texas, certainly Dallas, San Antonio, which has been for quite a while too. If anyone knows how diverse the Latino community is in Texas, it's the two of you. So Leticia, you, as I mentioned, you run statewide. You've been a legislator. You have, and for over 2 decades, you've seen the changes. What are some of the most profound changes, the comments that you would like to make to someone who asks you, what is a Latino in Texas?
Well, first of all, thank you, Regina, for being the moderator, and salute to my friends in the Dallas County Democratic Party. Y'all were so kind to me when I ran statewide and had the opportunity to visit the majority of the counties in the state. And I fell in love with our state all over again. It gave me the opportunity to see all of our state and its peoples. I want to tell you, if you ask the question about what is a Latino, well, there is no one definition. And particularly in Texas, we were once part of Spain. We were part of Mexico. So there are families like mine that are 7, 8 generations on this land. And the joke is that we were here when it was Spain and France and Mexico and the Republic of Texas, and then the United States, and then the Confederacy, and back to the United States. And you know, our families were in the same piece of land. It was the damn government that kept changing over and over again. And then, like my neighbors down the street, who are recent immigrants here from a Central American country, you can't pinpoint the typical Latino. We range in those that are recent Texans and those that are members of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. We range in educational status for those that are struggling and never completed a high school education, to the most brilliant scientists and business leaders and leaders in this state. We also differ regionally. And that's what I learned, is that the commonality we have, of course, is linguistic. It's cultura, it's cultural. I can definitely tell you, we're a mama culture. We are bound by love of music and love of family and love of celebration and loyalty. But we also are very diverse in where we live, in what we do. And so if somebody thinks that they can win an election by coming into this state or saying a few words of Spanish without understanding our culture, understanding our history and our diversity, they've got to understand that the community is very diverse. So we're growing, we're exceedingly young, we are all over the place as far as education. But what binds us is, I would say, the commonality that I have found is that desire for the next generation to have more opportunities than the current one.
Well, Sarah, sort of the same question, and you two have come from different parts of Texas. You now live in North Texas, but you've had the experience, and you've also seen it from this national perspective, coming back to Texas at various points, not only in your professional life as you know, the director of you know, immigration and customs, but also having been here before as the U.S. attorney. So what's your answer to folks who want that simple answer, like just give it to me in the kernel of who Latinos are?
Thank you, Regina. If it looks like I'm frozen, it's because I am. Somehow my Zoom is not Zooming me, but that's me in the screen. So hopefully you can at least hear my voice. And it's such a pleasure to share the virtual podium with the two of you. You are such extraordinary women, and I'm just delighted to be here with you guys. Okay, so let me say that, yes, you're right. I'm from South Texas. I went to all the way through my undergraduate schooling in South Texas. And so I am born and bred. I left the state for those 2 years that I served the Obama administration, but I came back as soon as we were told our services weren't needed on January 17th, 2017 at noon. And I have seen a lot. And as the director of immigration, I can tell you that even our Hispanic community all over the state, and as Leticia was saying, from state region to state region, feel very differently about issues like immigration and others. Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate to participate in Beto O'Rourke's campaign. I thought I might do more good in Nueces County, where I was brought up, as opposed to here in Dallas. Carol was taking care of Dallas for us. So I spent some time down in Bishop, Texas, in Corpus Christi. I know, Leticia, you run statewide. You know what I'm about to say, but this was a learning experience for me. And that is, it sounds naive, but that is, no, not all Hispanics think alike on any particular issue. I remember running into somebody who suggested, as many voters do, and this is one of the issues we're going to have to address if we're going to increase the Latino voting segment, and that was, my vote makes no difference. Why would you think that my vote would make any difference? And of course, I went off into a long, I am a lawyer after all, a long diatribe about how close 2016 was, and that in 3 states, 80,000 votes out of millions cast would have moved the needle another way. So it is, it's important to realize that we can't assume that if someone is Hispanic, for example, with me, you can't assume that I'm Catholic, because I'm not. But I think a lot of people assume that all Hispanics are Catholic. That's just a small example of the variety there is. And that makes it challenging. But I'm proud of the fact that not all of us think alike. There are 7 of us in our siblings in our family. Believe me, the gamut is represented in that group. Most of them are right-minded, that is left. And I really, but I really did appreciate from working in a campaign that was, again, statewide, like Leticia went to, and my hat's off to you, Leticia. You look pretty good for having survived a statewide race in Texas. Is that it's a challenge to all of us, but it is something that I think we all can contribute to, and hopefully we'll talk about some of those strategies.
Well, and let us, we're going to move right into the strategies. But before we talk about the strategies, we do want to thank our sponsors for today's event. And we could not, this has been such an important opportunity for us to be able to be doing this. And so many thanks to Carol and to the whole team for doing this. But most importantly, we want to thank these sponsors. They should be on your screen, but the Tillotson Law Firm, Carol and Dan Donovan, the meeting sponsors, Terry Barker, Dr. Catalina Garcia, Hamilton Wingo, our friendship sponsors, Marcy Helfand and Robert Book, and Scott Pettis, LLP. Thank you so much. Wouldn't be able to do this without you, so we really appreciate it. So back to the screens and back to this next question. Now, yesterday, the Dallas County Democratic Party partnered with another group, and there were questions about how is it then that we're going to make the kinds of changes that we're seeing right now in terms of being able to engage the Latino voter. And this particular demographer said, and she's kind of a forecaster, she said, okay, here in Texas, if you really want to make that change, you've got to engage the Latino voter, because if you do, there is this chance that Joe Biden could win Texas. But it is absolutely incumbent that Latinos are part of the equation to do that and to make that kind of change. So with that, the question is this: how are we going to engage the Latinx voter in Texas? What are the biggest issues that you see that will make that kind of difference? And I'll start kind of toss that over to Sarah and then move back to Leticia on what you're seeing out there that might make that difference, and your advice, having traveled on this, to engaging the Latinx voter.
Regina, I think addressing the issues on a small individual basis or small group basis in as many areas and places as we can. Let's start with our own neighborhoods, with either party groups within your neighborhood. The Democratic Party in our neighborhood is the Preston Hollow one, or heck, your own families, to discuss the issues. And to me, what 2018 showed us was healthcare and education are up there at the top, as they should be. And I am proud to say that I believe, obviously, that our party has the right position on those two issues. It is so good that we have seen a turn in the educational opportunities and advancement of Latinos in education, including higher education. The numbers have been going up and up, and that's important that we continue to encourage our community to do what they can to get that education, which will help them in their professions, in their lives, in their livelihoods, whatever it is. And then, of course, healthcare. I mean, how much more timely and important an issue can that be than what are we, just a few months away from the election, and we're in the midst of a pandemic worldwide, but most critical to us, obviously, in this nation. So my view is, I thought that, at least for me, it was so helpful to actually engage people in my former county, Nueces County, in the issues that were important in the 2018 race. And I found that those two seemed to be of the greatest import, was education and healthcare. And we just need to talk about it. And we need to listen to people share their thoughts about it. What's good, what's bad about how it's being approached, what's good or bad or not good about what the Democrats are doing, and try to bring that feedback to help the party in addressing those questions.
Well, Leticia, you mentioned something at the outset, that when we think about bringing in, or when politicians have come into Texas, and we've seen this before, all of a sudden a sprinkling of Spanish, a little bit here, a few things put in Spanish, a translation, direct translation, but it's often too late. And when it's done, it's just almost as an afterthought. If one were not thinking an afterthought and said, this is a critically important group that needs to have the issues addressed, what would those issues be for you, and how would you do the playbook for someone who honestly and absolutely wanted to not only engage the Latinx voter, but actually wants to get those votes cast? Because that's been the big issue, is how do you ensure that the Latinos vote at the percentages that other demographic groups do?
Well, we know sombrero politics just doesn't work. You just can't do a drive-by, a fly-by, come into a community, do an event, and who knows if we're going to be able to do events, or do a few ads, speak a few words of Spanish, and think you've covered the base with Latinos. We're not stupid. You've got to have a consistent effort. You have to have people on the ground that are trusted in the community, that know the community. And understand that there are linguistic barriers, there are cultural barriers. In some cases, people feel that there may be legal barriers, and some people feel that there are financial barriers. I was told once with a group of folks, the same thing, boy, if you Latinos voted in the numbers we did, then Texas would be blue. And they said, what, you people don't care? And I said, no, they care very much. They care very much about their children, about their parents, they care about their neighborhoods, but there is a great disconnect. They feel sometimes that their vote is not going to count. And because let me tell you, we are, something about all Latinos is that we pride ourselves in the type of endurance that we have, the type of crap that is thrown at us and that we're able to withstand. And if any of you have ever seen a Latino movie, a Spanish language movie, it's kind of like a B-Western. And there's always the two scenes, the woman giving birth with no drugs, and then the guy who's either taking out the bullet or whatever, right? And it's, I can withstand this pain, I can withstand all this humility. I mean, you can throw anything at me, I'm a survivor of it. And it is the most beautiful part of our culture, is this resiliency, right? But it's a double-edged sword in that resiliency is that it's okay. I've had it worse. My parents had it worse. It's all right. I mean, they promised me this stuff. And what do you think? My vote's going to count? It is that indifference to the systemic discrimination that has occurred here in this state, generation after generation, and promises that were made and not kept. And we've had a sordid history. But things are changing, and it's our job as politicians, as leaders, to go in and understand the community and get to the pressure points. And what I have found, at least that has upped our participation in the places where we put organizations, and you get folks that are cynical, is to ask them one question. I say, do you love your children? Don't do it for you. I know you love your children. I know you want a better opportunity for them. So why would you let someone more stupid make that decision at the voting box for you? And Latinos don't like to be played. No, they don't like to be sinvergüenzos también. So they don't like to be played. And what I found is that combination, they don't like to be played and they love their children. You can get them to almost do anything, but you got to have an authentic candidate, because they can see right through the one that's coming through, just saying the few words of Spanish. So the messaging, understanding the culture, and then that continuous outreach, the continuous, don't just come in during election time. You got to have that continuous. And then it becomes a culture of voting. Once you get mama voting, once you get la tia voting, once you get the family voting, it becomes the culture of voting. And statistics show that.
So there was an interesting op-ed a day or two ago in the New York Times, written by Stephanie Valencia, who had worked in the Obama administration, and then has started this new company called Equilabs, which is looking to do some work in the Latino community and creating some data on it. And there were they had a couple conclusions, and the conclusions were these: that if you are able to engage the ambivalent voter and the Latina, those would be the two ways that you would make a difference for someone like Joe Biden to win in November. So as you kind of followed up, and you mentioned Latinas early on in your comments, and you zeroed in on the Latinas, and you only have to look at North Texas to see the extraordinary success of a number of Latinas as state representatives and who have, done extraordinarily wonderful jobs. What then would your messaging be to engage the Latina voter? And I'm also going to follow up on a question that has been posed to us. There's a great organization in our community called the Texas Latina List, which has helped various Latinas, and I'm sure we're supporters of yours. How would you tell and advise a Latina PAC like this to be able to get out the vote and to ensure that they would maximize the votes? What is that in addition to talking to their kids?
Well, right now we are in a health crisis that has created an economic crisis, and expecting people to put campaigns at the forefront is unrealistic, particularly Latinos that are devastated with both. The data shows that both African American community and the Latino community are harder hit in health and in the economic consequences of this COVID in Texas and elsewhere. But Latinas make the healthcare decisions. In fact, the data show it's clear. 80% of women in this country make the healthcare decisions for the families. For Latinas, it's like 92%. Who's making the decisions right now about whether they may wear face masks? Who makes the purchasing decisions? Who's filling out those unemployment forms for the family? Who's making the choices, the food choices right now? Who is holding it together? Who do you think is teaching the kids in school if they're trying to do their work? Because I'm going to tell you right now, the data shows that it is 43% of women right now are spending 3 to 4 hours a day, either planning their children's work or helping them with work. We don't know exactly how many, but I'm sorry guys, y'all are not, there's very rare, but the guys are not holding up their end of the bargain on this during the shelter at home. And a lot of the women who still have had the opportunity to work from home on top of keeping their kids and checking the schoolwork and doing that, they're still working from home. So women are exhausted. The candidate, and I believe Joe Biden, understands. He's got more empathy than the current occupant of the White House. He understands and he knows people. So the key is Latinas. The key is understanding their worries right now are about healthcare and about their parents or about maybe their tia, trying to figure that out, wondering if, I just listened to this woman who, she is so excited that her son is the first to graduate from college. His opportunities right now for employment, this is the first in their family to graduate from college. And what are his opportunities now? And so frightened because he's got college debt. And what opportunity? So I'm going to tell you, Joe Biden understands families. He understands. And he's got that calm but vigorous leadership that can translate to that Latina. Calm, steady, get us out of this, listen to the scientists, and I'm with you. We're all with you. So I think that the key is Latinas and understanding what they're going through now, and understanding that although we're very different in the regionally and different from the different countries, the Latino countries, we all are suffering in this in some way or another. And that commonality is understanding that some folks are really, really struggling.
So,
And the last thing that they're trying to do is think about a campaign.
Sarah,
I was just going to say, Leticia, I know I absolutely agree with you on understanding and all that. But to me is, I was surprised. I'll just tell you, I don't know if either one of you were. as Regina was also digging up some information for us, the statistics that Latina women are voting in significantly lower numbers than their women in white or in non-Hispanic Black communities. 15 to 20%, that is a big chunk. Now, you hit something on the head, I think, about being tired.
Exhausted.
I got tired just hearing you saying about what it is, how we go about having to worry about everything, and that these days are so stressed. So we have to find ways, and in my view, gathering groups of Latinas, I mean, if we are doers and we see a problem, we have to address it. And we just need to persuade and talk to Latinas in whatever way we can, folks. There are ways in all kinds of communities to gather people later on, and even by Zoom, and talk about these issues and how we get these women who are you're right, who are the head of the family in many instances, it wasn't my immediate family, to see the issues and why and which party stands where, and why one party has a better standing than others, and to get them to lead the family forward to the voting booth. And that to me can only be accomplished by personal contact. And that's going to be very hard in the coming months to have that personal contact, because Zoom is wonderful, but you know, it's hard to connect if you're not in a room with somebody.
So we're starting to get a number of questions, and if you have your question, please do type it in. But Sarah Kovach had a great question that's kind of following up on what you're saying, Sarah, and also something that followed up from something you said, Leticia. And her question is this: if you're saying that relational is the key, you know, will then Latinas vote just to get Trump out? Or, you know, must the relation be in place regardless? And this is her question. I think it's a great question because, you know, we talked about the time, now we've got these issues, but we know that that Latinos have been at the forefront in many cities now, at a higher percentage of COVID deaths are now being required in some of these meatpacking industries to be, that they too are frontline workers and they get to go in there no matter what because of these laws. So how then do we create this relational opportunities that you mentioned before, not being somebody coming in at the last minute and saying, please get, you know, we need your vote. What would you do to really encourage? And we are talking about a lot of tired people who are working very, very hard. These problems didn't occur just with COVID, I will tell you. It occurred before, when you had half of Dallas earning less than $50,000 and the majority of those folks being people of color. So Leticia, what's your response to that great question?
Well, Regina, exactly what you said, because the data came out in November of 2019. Latinas earned 54 cents on the dollar of the white non-Hispanic male. That situation occurred before the COVID pandemic. But it is imperative that this pandemic has exposed the policies and the ineptness of this administration. And people can see that. Pretty much everybody can see that. If we want to change that, if we want to prepare better next time, if we want to climb out of this hole, then we got to change the current leadership in the White House. And to do that, that means that they have to care enough and to go vote. And we've got to get that reason. And I can tell you that generation after generation, and they used it with my mom and my grandmother, Republicans use fear and anger to get people to the polls. They make somebody a scapegoat, they have the ads, and it's fear and anger. Democrats don't. We're kind of honest. We tout the good qualities of a candidate. What do you rely on? On hope, on opportunity, on the things that are aspirational. Well, we don't have to scapegoat anybody. We have an enemy right now that we're fighting, and the incompetence of what is occurring. So all we need to do is to make sure that we connect. And that means if we can't do door canvassing, we're going to have to rely on mail pieces again. We're going to have to rely on cell phone to cell phone conversations. We're going to have to rely on, if we can't be in big group meetings and events, we're going to have to go to the small little meetings, maybe like the old precinct meetings, the little house meetings where you have small meetings. Those are very powerful, but it's got to be consistent. And I think that we've got a tremendous opportunity, not just nationally, but I think we have an amazing opportunity here in the Texas House to really make some fantastic gains.
Sarah, how do you look at this in terms of getting that word out and, answering Sarah's question about, is it just enough to be saying Trump, or how do you create these relations? What's your advice, especially since you've been down and did so much that you did with the campaign for Beto, who did extremely well?
Well, I don't care what motivates anybody to vote. We just got to get out there and vote. I wish I were as calm and rational as Leticia is, but I tell you what, I think I'm going to go out and grab people by the shoulder and shake them up a little bit, because this is a vital election. I came from the Department of Justice for I was there 10 years, and and I cannot tell you how proud I was to say just what the department's name is. We were there for justice, and the big no-no was a political connection to justice. The big no-no, as Paul, your husband, knows, Regina, and to see what's happening now, the lofty goals that the Department of Justice has to be undermined and negated by people with a political agenda is so disheartening. I don't know that that's the issue on everybody's mind, but I will tell you it's important, and we just got to bring everything to the table when we visit with people and talk to people. And let me just say this, let's start big if you want, but let's start with our own families. Okay, we have large families. We typically have large families.
Guilty.
Let's make sure that within our own family and their kids and whatever the relationships are, that we make sure they understand the importance and that they work towards getting their own selves to the voting booth. But then the suggestion is, and take a friend with you, or take a neighbor, or whatever you can do to facilitate. I think I saw a question about mail-in ballot voting. That would be extraordinary. That would be extraordinary, but I don't think that's in the offing anytime real soon. So we just have to do what we can to emphasize how important it is that we participate. I don't care how, whether it's to get the current occupant out, whether it's to elevate this country to being a decent country again, whatever it takes. Fear, I don't care. Perhaps we stop short of lying, I don't know. But otherwise, we just have to do what needs to be done with respect to those closest to us, and then we can expand it from there.
Well, again, if people have questions, please be sure to send them in. Leticia, did you have a comment on that?
I just remember what leadership Dallas County Democratic Party had when I was running, and how they provided that leadership and worked with other groups, like-minded groups, to set goals and have territories and kind of divide up and say, we'll take this. I think for us to win and for us to maximize, particularly in what will be a second round of coronavirus with the flu in the fall, is to not be parochial, to be able to partner with other organizations, other maybe not for other community groups, to mobilize that get out the vote effort, because we can't afford to be territorial at this point. And the object is to get out as many people as we can to participate, and to make sure that we can continue that pathway, to engage young voters on those college campuses, to engage women, and maybe to do what we hadn't done in a long time. I remember my grandmother talked about what she did is she would get on the bus, and she would get on the bus with the #1 routes that were going from the barrio to the downtown, or to the places where people worked. And she would start talking to women, and she would start talking to people about going to vote, and then tell them to call me, or here's this number, you can vote. It's important. It's important. Well, she would do that on her way to work, and making that conversation. It all starts with the conversation. Don't be afraid to have it.
Amen.
And so there's a follow-up. Bianca asked a great question about this that she wanted to be asked. And she said, what if we work closely with LULAC and organizations like Mi Familia Vota?
Absolutely. Especially because there's limited resources, and we know there's limited resources. So partner with groups in their specialty that they know that they can do, and cognizant of all the financial rules and IRS rules and everything that we need to go by. But if somebody has a certain expertise in something and you have a certain expertise in something else, let's go for it. Let's partner, because we know that when we elect and we can change the state, that the policies that can happen. What if we had the expansion of Medicaid? Do you realize that, I mean, we have 5 million people that are uninsured, and now people are realizing. I had a lady tell me, oh my God, my daughter lost her job and she can't afford to cover, and she doesn't have health insurance, and we don't know what she's going to do, and she's got 2 kids. And well, guess what? Now she's one of those people that legislative session after legislative session, the Democrats have taken the charge on in Texas, trying to expand Medicaid. What that would have meant. I mean, for 3 years, the federal government picked up the cost, and now it's at 90%. I mean, Republican states did it, right? So
being pharmacists as
well. You want to tear out your hair sometimes, but what can we do? Because winning feels, I always tell people, oh man, winning feels so good. It feels so good. But it's not the winning, it's what you can do when you're there to change the policies for families. And that's what it's about.
Well, Sarah, I know there are people on this phone call and on this Zoom call that they say, okay, we want that game plan. Let's see what we can do. And Jessica has a great question about Senator Sanders, who did very well with the Latino voters. What would you advise the Biden campaign as they reach out to voters across Texas? They certainly did well in California. What were those things that you saw that seemed to really work? And let's see if others can start thinking about those kinds of ideas. And we're getting some great questions here that are coming in. So what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. To me, we do need to concentrate on issues. Again, I think healthcare is going to be a big issue this time around, particularly in this context. It's not so much to me, this is my personal opinion, reasonable minds can differ. It's not so much to me that we denigrate the opposition as we build up what we can do, as Leticia said, with that power that the voter has to change and hold accountable politicians who aren't going down the right road. So I would say yes, and I think Senator Sanders made that connection with Latinos because he listened a lot. He listened a lot. We need to hear what the community says, and I think the 3 of us are going to be engaging in that in this group we've just been appointed to the board of, in order to assess the Hispanic community in Texas, which is Leticia pointed out, is so different from the Hispanic community in California, and their Mexican food is awful too. So, I just think, Leticia, you're not from California, are you?
No, she's native Texan.
No, I'm sorry, you go past Texas, Maverick County.
You got it. So I think, I would hope we could get a lot of Sanders infrastructure here in Texas because he did very well in connecting with the Latino voter in Texas, on board with the Biden campaign in order to try some of those same strategies. It's really respecting, there's really a need to show, and hopefully it's genuine, your respect for the community, our culture, our people, our like Leticia was saying, our matriarchs, you know, how we view the world. And I think that's something that this campaign is going to need to do. We need to get people off the couch and into the voting booth with whatever strategy is good for us. We all have a different way of approaching things, but it's going to take everybody coming to the table to work that.
Well, Silvana has a comment that she's mentioned about partnering with groups in the short term for 2020, but encouraging Latinx to participate and join caucuses. Looking at the list of delegates, they check more than one group and sort of pulling people together. And so that's a great question, especially about the young Latinos, the Latinx young. What are some of the kinds of tactics, things that you saw that did work at various points, Leticia, as you were going across Texas and as you're seeing the changes in the demographics? Because one thing that is very important in knowing about the Latino community is it's a much younger population as a median age than other demographic groups in Texas. And if you look at the majority of kids in many of the independent school districts, they are Latinos. And that goes across the state. You know, Dallas is an example of that. It goes across the state. It doesn't matter. And it certainly goes off, including in the rural areas at this point. So, because I think what the goal on this one is to say, what is it that we're going to do to engage? And you're saying about the health system, talking about that and explaining that that could be a difference. But what about some of the education issues that you had mentioned early on as well?
Well, I think the education issues, but what I see, at least with the young people and their really attraction and following of Senator Sanders, is that I saw an energy and a vibrancy there that I had not seen before. We saw it with Barack Obama. If you remember that excitement, that energy, that sense of urgency that we had to get this done, and a lot of first-time participants. A lot of them young, 18-year-old, but we had a lot of in their 20s and early 30s that had never participated before, that have been excited, and they each had their issues. I have children in their late 20s and early 30s, and I can tell you, I have Bernie's, I have my, and it was the issue before the pandemic. It was climate change. It really was climate change for them. For another one of mine, it was just the income inequity in our country, with such an amazing amount of wealth for such a few people, and the majority of people struggling from paycheck to paycheck. And Senator Sanders just vocalized that and hit on that. And for Latinos, I mean, at least for where I come from, in the barrios, I mean, you walk into homes and you still have the picture of, Zapata, right? The revolución, the inequity, it's like our Robin Hood, right? So it spoke to them that somebody is listening to this inequity, into this, right? Well, when we move toward that in education, it is that understanding, as my grandmother used to say, the most important thing to her was el capingón. ¿Cuándo va a ser el día del capingón? El capingón. And people talked about it. ¿Qué es el capingón? Well, it's the cap and gown. If you go into any household, right? For my grandmother, she had pictures of her children and her grandchildren, all the cap and gown pictures, because she left Mexico during a revolution. And she only got to go to the 3rd grade. She became a citizen when she was 68 years old here in the United States. And the proudest she was, the best days of her life, were watching her children and her grandchildren in ese capingón. And she had that's her ego wall. For so many of the parents, ese capingón. And they strive for it, right? That educational piece, the first one, changes the dynamic in the family. what I know about democratic values is the opportunity for a strong public school system for every child, for access to post-high school training, community college, there's something after that. It's not just about the high school diploma. I know that that's what the issues are for us, and that link to it, not of you're on your own, or that you're saddled with so much debt that you can't even afford to buy a house, that American dream. It is El Día del Capingón. And that's universal in Latino families, whether you're in Central America or South America or right in Mexico. It is that I want my children to cross that stage.
And I do hope, yeah, and I do hope that all of you who are listening to this incredible Zoom conversation are also looking at the comments that are being placed by everyone, because these are coming to all of you, because there's some great organizations that are being mentioned. And many thanks to Zulika Hussein and to Eric Sadia, who have been putting some great comments about organizations that they've been involved in. And I've had the great opportunity to go to the Student Voter Empowerment Coalition, and they've got the Facebook information on there as well. You know, they've just done extraordinary work. Temple Emmanuel in Dallas has been the linchpin for that back when we could go back to meetings. So now you'll have to go onto the Facebook, but clearly following up on these issues. Sarah, we're hearing about some of these questions too, on just other areas, not only that we want to be sure that we're engaging the Latino youth, but we can't forget some of the, you know, the older voters as well. And what I saw with some of the folks in Nevada, where I actually did volunteer for vice president, there were a number of young Latinos who brought their parents actually to the caucuses. And in many respects, some of these young Latinos have been doing so much for their parents, speaking to them, translating for them, because their parents didn't speak English or didn't speak it well enough, that they felt comfortable making kinds of speeches at different places. And so their kids were there and they respected, and you mentioned the word respect before. We just have a few minutes left before we finish here. What are some of your other comments that you would give, not only to the young Latino, but also to these older Latinos, to ensure that they're understanding how important their vote is going to be in this election, and that they can make the difference in this election?
Well, I think we go in prepared, hopefully, and maybe Carol in her wrap up can say something about this. The party statewide is working on some bullet points or pamphlets or something that we can carry with us to go around. And again, I think the issues are going to be very important. We already talked about three that to me are essential. And you know, Regina, CPP, CPPP focuses on education, income inequality, and healthcare. Oh my goodness. If we can just show that we need to change direction in all three areas in Texas and do a better job, and hopefully we can turn the State House also, where really a lot of the work is done, then I think we can reach both the young people and the older persons. I will say before we get off of young people, I think as I get older, I appreciate younger people more, because I used to be one a long time ago. But it's just extraordinary to me, that energy that Leticia talks about. I don't know, young people have a way of radiating it better than the rest of us tired people do. And so I love the idea of what you suggested, Regina, was looking on our chat thing to talk about, look at some of these groups. There is a role for everyone, whether you want to work with young people, older people, the challenges are there for everybody. I've just thought about 2 or 3 things that I'm gonna get both of y'all to help me on to reach out to people and just, you know, and arm twisting. Let's not forget arm twisting, and making people feel guilty. I go for anything. I go for anything.
Okay, well, one thing before we do get off, and I don't think Carol is going to be coming back on this, but she did ask me to do this one thing before we do wrap up, and that is this. Could we see that sponsor list again? Because we would not, the Dallas County Democratic Party could not be doing this great event without these amazing sponsors. They're on your screen right now. And so please take a look at them. To the Tillotson Law Firm, to Carol and Dan, to Terry Barker, Catalina Garcia, Dr. Catalina Garcia, Hamilton Wingo, the Honorable Marcy Helfand and Robert Book, and Scott Pettis, LLP. Thank you. This could not happen. One thing I think we really want to be sure that all of you do, and you can take a photo of all of the information, because there's some great organizations that have listed themselves. One of the ones that I think Sarah had asked me to be sure to mention again, and we're delighted that we've had the former president of Latina List, Irene Ross, on this discussion too. It's another group, and they've been really extraordinary. So Latina List. There are a number of different ones mentioned there as well. Carol and her team have all of this memorialized. So if you have would like to volunteer to be part of this, be sure, please, to check in with the Dallas County Democratic Party, and they will be sure to connect you with the group. And we have to mention again how important it is for all of us to be looking at the social media, especially during this time. And that has been mentioned by some folks on this chat as well, that we've got to be using our Facebook. We've got to be using Instagram. We've got to be using, she's mentioned a couple of different ones as well that we need to be thinking about, because we've got to meet people. And that's how we're creating these relations that Leticia was mentioning too. And Sarah, thank you for everything and your extraordinary comments about your experiences and how these issues that we've been talking about are going to be so important in November, and that we've got to be substantive about these issues and explain to people what that vote is going to make and how that vote is going to make a difference in November. So we're going to wrap up in like a minute or two. Do you have that 30-second kernel of advice, Leticia, that you'd like to say to all of these panelists? Because you have inspired. I've actually never seen so many comments written during a presentation. So you've actually got people thinking a lot. So any kind of kernels of wisdom, and then Sarah, I'll do the same to you.
I just want to say that thank you so much. It is a joy to be with you, Regina, the Dallas Democratic Party, and the magnificent Sarah. We'll get together. I know that Dallas Democrats are true blue, and you have led the way. We saw that happen there first, and then in Harris County and in Bexar County. Lead the way again. Show us the way in Texas. And I know with your energy and your vibrancy, y'all could show us the way. Stay safe, love your families, and let's win in November.
Sarah.
And I think Leticia really hit it on the head. We are all family oriented. That's a big thing in our culture. And we need to remind people that it's not just the present, but the future that is at stake. And let's go for it. And gosh, wasn't it wonderful to have Leticia as a statewide candidate? Texas is lost. So thank you both, Regina and Leticia. You all are examples to all of us and inspirational.
Carol, everybody, thank you so much. Carol, you've asked me to give a shout out to Nick Quintanilla, who founded the Young Latino Democrats of Dallas County. We've got some great folks that have been on this one. You can tell that you will get connected with some great folks when you do reach out to the Dallas County Democratic Party, and we need every single one of you working and helping. And then let's ensure that the Latino vote comes out strong and supports the right candidates, which of course will be Joe Biden, top of the ticket. And remember, we're not going to be able to push one little lever just for the Democratic Party. We're going to have to go down that list, and we're going to have to make sure people know and are educated about understanding how important their vote is this year. So to all of you, thank you so much. The energy has been terrific, and we look forward to the next Dallas County Democratic Chat. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Happy Mother's Day, and see you at the convention virtually.
That's right. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms on this, and to those, don't forget, happy Mother's Day to your moms. Thank you. Bye-bye.